Kyros' armies were unable to break the siege of Vendrian's Well. Thwarted by your intervention, the disfavored and Scarlet Chorus were repulsed from the inner keep of the Citadel. Though you stepped out from under the Overlord's shadow, you nevertheless satisfied the terms of the edict, removing the death sentence from everyone in the valley. No sooner had this peace settled than a new danger eclipsed it: the civil war between Kyros' forces. With the threat of execution no longer looming overhead, the Overlord's armies turned their attention away from the Citadel and toward each other. The tensions that flared over the long siege reached an explosive crescendo as the disfavored and Scarlet Chorus armies clashed iron and bronze in a hasty, disorganized battle. The battle that followed was fast and haphazard, with no clear victors or feats worthy of boasting. The disfavored made an orderly retreat to their fortress in the Blade Grave, while the Scarlet Chorus scattered in every direction, with most heading toward their stronghold in the Stone Sea. As days passed, the wounded and injured were nursed to health. You explored your strange bastion and planned your next steps with careful deliberation. The triumph of the Vendrian God brings hope to the subjugated people of the Tiers. Other factions, defiant of the Overlord's rule, are encouraged to proclaim their refusal to be ruled by a distant master. Tunon, the Archon of Justice, observes the chaos and discord spreading across the land. The Archon summons his Fatebinder to return to court at the Bastard City and report on his actions in Vendrian's Well. This is no small thing you've accomplished. People all across the Tiers will discuss it. In secret, of course. Kyros is still a threat to this realm, but for the first time we can imagine rising up. In 3 years of war, the best we have ever managed is a trifling victory. A skirmish here, a small engagement there. This is our first major triumph. We endured the combined might of the disfavored and the chorus, all with Kyros' edict looming overhead. And going forward, we have the advantage of a divided enemy. For the moment, the momentum is ours. We will do more than talk. We will bring order to these lands. I will speak to Tunon. Unconditional cooperation from a servant of Kyros. If someone had told me a year ago to expect this, I would have laughed until my ribs cracked. There is still much to do. I'll see you back in Ascension Hall. Uh-oh. The dizzying energy from the Spire falters. Whatever force awoke the powers that reside here gutters and fades, though a faint hum persists in the sculpture at the center. Strange. The portal was here a moment ago. Let's look around for a solution. The humming from the curious sculpture pulses and builds in volume, as if to draw your attention. Oh, Scarlet Chorus Wrath ability, Scarlet Skin. This is wrong. This is so very wrong. Ari paces the diameter of the spire, careful not to tarry too close to the edge. She pauses when you catch her attention. I hope you have a plan for getting us down, because I don't appreciate this one bit. What do you think about the Civil War, disfavored and Scarlet Chorus? At least the Overlord's armies will occupy each other for the time, or until the Voices of Nerat unhinges his jaw and eats Graven Ash. She glances at you. Can he do that? Never mind. I don't want to know. My hope is that we've sent a message to anyone in the Tiers who seeks freedom from Kyros. What you've done here, it ought to turn some heads. Tell me about yourself. She sighs and shifts her feet. I really can't talk. If I don't keep moving, I think I'll be sick. She glances at the edge of the spire with dread. Disfavored Wrath ability, Undying Fatebinder. Oh? Once per combat, gain a damage absorption shield for a short time if you fall to low health. Interesting. We've acquired Mountain Spire. You've acquired your first Spire. This Spire will be your home base as you advance through the lands of Kyros' Tears. Your Spire gives you a free location to rest and recover from your travels. As you acquire more Spires, you will discover additional functionality. Oh, okay. Interesting. Ending Kyros' Edict on Vendrian's Well filled you with a great deal of power. This will undoubtedly prove useful as you travel through the tiers. You should investigate the origins of this power to find ways to acquire more. A new bar on your character sheet displays your current level of power. Press C to open up your character sheet and view your current level of power. Okay. This is my power. Power at 400. Not really sure what that means, but okay. Companion combos have been improved. Good. Speaking of our companions, Barrack stared at you through his narrow eye slits, saying nothing at all. The only evidence that he still lives is the steam of heavy exhalations that escape the cracks of his helm. Are you okay in there, Barrack? He continues to stare, unmoving. Though you can't see his face, you get the impression that his mood has darkened even further. The stench that his armor exudes has intensified. Are you mad about something?
You betrayed Graven Ash, the Legion, and our northern countrymen. As far as I'm concerned, you are a traitor to this campaign.
Barrack leans in close, looking ready to throttle you. We've gained major fear now with Barrack, although his loyalty's still at 4. How best to describe this, then? Stand down, soldier. Something in your tone causes Barrack to reflexively straighten his posture and stand at attention. He gradually eases his stance and looks down at his palms, horrified by his automatic response.
Let us be clear on one point. You have my blade, but my heart belongs to Ash and the North. I am a weapon bound to you only by duty, nothing more. My Lord Binder, you have something which requires my attention? What can I do for you?
Okay, so that just dismisses that. To Barrack and Verse, have either of you noticed that you fight particularly well together?
The thought has crossed my mind from time to time. During the many battles of the Conquest, we found ourselves standing back to back with enemies on all sides on more than one occasion.
The big guy here is as useless as an empty scabbard without his phalanx to keep him alive, but I move fast enough to compensate for it. And it's nice having a living wall of rusted iron I can use for cover.
How do you think this is possible?
I would suggest that our fighting styles complement each other, but they do not. I would suggest that we get along, but we do not. We don't even finish each other's
sentences. Okay, that was strange. Did you hear that? The next time I catch a whiff of Barrack's meaning, I'm keeping my mouth shut.
I want you two to train together.
Absolutely not. Our fighting styles are incompatible, and any disfavored lieutenant will tell you not to join at the hip soldiers who can't stomach each other.
I'm inclined to agree. If you want to pair up fighters, there has to be some great passion or magnetism between them. We don't have it.
If neither of you's up to the challenge, then I won't force the matter.
Now see here, Verse's temperament and unpredictable ways are an annoyance, but no challenge is beyond my skill. Verse, we should take some time to face off in the sparring fields. It might even improve our disposition towards one another.
I'd rather watch you devour your armor one shaved-off spoonful at a time. But since that isn't going to happen anytime soon, I suppose I'll make an effort.
Barrack and Verse have gained a new combo ability, Arrow Storm. Very good.
My Lord Binder, what can I do for you? We are siblings. Half-siblings. Regrettable and repugnant as that fact might seem, it is true. Though the products of different nations and cultures, We have the distinction of sharing a father.
Oh! Well, there you go. That's what the connection is between the two. I was wondering, I thought that they were perhaps former lovers, but no, siblings.
I am disgusted by the thought that my father lay down with some low-born southern farmhand. But my horror does not spare me from the truth of it. So I accept the fact and try to move on.
You should take it as a compliment to our father's skills. My mother's a tough woman to please. I rather think I took after him, don't you?
How did you two become aware of this?
During the conquest, the Scarlet Chorus made sport of shooting down messenger birds on their way to the disfavored camp. Anything they could accomplish to hinder our efforts or embarrass us was fair game. My father sent a missive intended for my eyes alone. By incredible chance, Verse intercepted it and recognized the name and handwriting. She found me in camp that evening, and we discussed our unlikely situation. We've done everything in our power to keep the word quiet. Not many in the Legion know that I share blood with a Southerner, much less a chorus rat.
Don't worry, Barrack. When my old gang boss caught wind of our discovery, I killed her and took the gang for myself. Our secret's safe with me. Well, it was, anyway.
Do you even like each other?
Not particularly. She is unstable at the best of times, and a hardened killer at the worst. I don't know what her family did to her, but she lacks any pretense of human decency.
It takes one to know one. Don't act like we're so different, Barrack. You're the most repressed and intolerant soldier I've ever met. You hide it under duty and pride, but it's still there.
How has this affected you, Beck?
Well, Verse has a nasty habit of jabbering in my ear and making this war intolerable. I plan on parting ways and returning to the north at first convenience. My father will answer for his infidelity. Beyond that, I am happy to consider myself in every way unaffected. My superiors once accused me of having an impulsive streak, but I have worked to suppress it at every turn.
When you go back home, send Father my fondest greetings and thanks. If he hadn't gone to ground on my mother's dry dock, I might not be here today.
It's terrible.
My heritage was a point of pride and distinction before I met you, Verse. Not that you would care.
Have you noticed any significant impact, Verse?
I've asked myself about that several times, but unfortunately I don't have what you'd call a definitive answer. The Northerners put a lot of meaning behind family and blood. Seems arbitrary to me, but I don't want to discredit it entirely. I told you about what happened to my Scarlet Fury sisters. The hesitation I experienced. Sometimes I wonder if that wasn't because of my connection to Barrack. He's stubborn, regimented, everything I'm not. I suppose there's no telling for sure, but if I had to guess... Yeah. Sometimes I get messed up in my head, and learning I had a brother has helped me understand that better.
I've heard enough, though I'd like to return to this topic when both of you are present.
If we must. Though I cannot imagine what can be gained of traveling together. I grant that we are both proficient fighters, but most days we get along as well as the archons of war and secrets.
All right. How about you, Verse?
So, the Scarlet Chorus and Disfavored are at each other's throats. Can't say I didn't see that coming, but the Archons might have waited until one war was over before they started another.
Do you think I made the right decision?
Fighting with the rebels? I'm sure Tunon didn't see that one coming when he dispatched you to help break the siege. Who can say? War is all about compromising your morals, deciding who lives and dies. What seems like a mistake turns into your greatest call down the road. I'll say this much. Our time together is anything but dull. My blades are yours for as long as you'll have me.
Noted. I have questions for you.
What do you need?
Well, the same thing for her then, huh?
The thought has crossed my mind.
The big guy here is as useless as an empty scabbard without his phalanx to keep him alive, but I move fast enough to compensate for it. And it's nice having a living wall of rusted iron I can use for cover.
Do you think this is because of your shared heritage?
If you want to attach some arcane meaning to the whole thing, be my guest. I couldn't tell you for sure. I doubt that a capable tactician could explain why certain soldiers learn to rely on each other.
In the disfavored ranks, the Oathbound seem to know more about synchronizing their efforts, and the same could be argued for the Scarlet Furies. I don't know how they pair up their units, but it isn't by virtue of blood.
How about Ebb here?
Salutations, Fatebinder. Or should I now call you Lord of Vendrian's Well? The Spire King? Prince of the suggestive vertical slab.
John Jeremy will suffice.
So if I might ask, what is your plan now? The edict no longer looms overhead, and Kyros' conquest of the Tears seems to be slipping, what with the armies in civil war.
Again, because we're a diplomat, we want to encourage Ebb's loyalty. The disfavored, the Scarlet Chorus, all of the Overlord's minions will fall.
Aren't you a feisty one? Where was this hate for Kyros' lackeys a few years ago? You seem so very eager to turn on your old allies. But I'm not one to criticize. I think it's wise to lean into the winds of change.
First order of business. I should speak with Tunon.
I would counsel you to do just that. I'm sure the events of Vendrian's Well are best explained from your mouth to Tunon's ears. Furthermore, I'd guess the Archon of Justice would want to know your take on the Archons and their divide.
I'm improvising. Any suggestions?
My first suggestion would be to build a boat. Something durable, and take our chances on the high seas far from Kyros. I have a second and more practical suggestion. Look to the horizon and slightly up. By that I mean the other spires. We should see what's atop the others. Otherwise someone else might look first.
What do you know about the spires?
Not nearly enough, apparently. To me, they've always been axioms of navigation. You can triangulate a lot of things with a sextant and a clear view to a spire or two. We've long known the spires radiate strong magical fields, and all save the mountain spire connect to the old walls. So it's the sort of thing common folk know from afar, but avoid day to day. I have a second and more practical suggestion. Look to the horizon and slightly up. By that I mean the other spires. We should see what's atop the others. Otherwise someone else might look first.
I don't suppose you've heard of others awakening the spires like I did.
Queens and kings of past ages have claimed the spires in the sense of, hey look, I put up a scaffold and hung a banner 1/10 of the height of a spire. But that's nowhere near the same thing as what we all just saw. So I say, let's see if the other spires react to you the same way this one does. If we don't, I'll take that as your way of saying you suffer from debilitating acrophobia.
I personally do not like heights, it's very true. I'd like to find others willing to follow me.
Kyros' armies made short work of the Tears. There's still plenty of anti-Kyros sentiment, but not a lot of folks with any fight left in them. But we have a few options. The classic option for a land war in the Tears is hiring Free City's mercenaries. Most of them were slain in the war, but the Bronze Brotherhood is still alive and strutting. They're stationed in Lethian's Crossing. The idea I was pitching to the Vendrian Guard. Let's arm every Beastman tribe that'll join us. The Stone Sea is home to a bevy of tribes that were freed during the war, and neither the Chorus nor the Disfavored can seem to tame them. If we really want to hate ourselves in the morning, Stalwart is pretty famous for not helping their neighbors, but also famous for being relentless at war. The Disfavored have their leadership surrounded, but the people in the storm-blasted countryside are still fighting. And while I don't endorse this, I must list all the options. The School of Ink and Quill. I'm sure there's some logic to working with them, just like there's some logic in cutting off your own head to prevent all future headaches.
Of those, what do you suggest first?
The Bronze Brotherhood of Lethian's Crossing aren't necessarily good company, but at least it'll be quick and easy to find out where we stand with them. We can afford them or not. They'll take a contract or not.
What about the less obvious options?
Well, the court has a guild of mages, the Forgebound, right? They are your peers, seeing as you're all legally sworn to Tunon. Maybe you can get them to be More loyal to you than to Tunon? We could also try to drive a wedge between the Earthshakers and the Disfavored. The Disfavored are Titus family, but the Earthshakers are married in family? They were followers of Karen and got adopted in.
You are right to call the Disfavored a family. We are far more than mere countrymen, and the strength of our legion is in the love we bear towards each other. Ever since the betrayal of Cairn, we have been less trusting of our arcane allies. The Earthshakers are a fickle academic bunch. Their principles align with their ambition, not the hopes of the North.
I wouldn't turn down the help of mages.
Nor should you. They may be deceitful and challenging to manage, but they have served the Iron Legion well in the past.
So if these Archon-less mages could be persuaded to rally to us, we'd tip things in our favor. Easier said than done, of course.
That's all I need to know.
Well, short of Tunon giving you orders on pain of death, you have the luxury of acting on your own volition. Though the Disfavored are likely to come for you. Whatever you decide, I'm at your disposal.
Your assistance would be most helpful. Thanks.
And I am thankful to not be a bloody pile of offal in Vendrian's well. Life under your banner will, I'm sure, prove most interesting.
Have a moment. Let's speak further.
What is it you need?
We should discuss matters at hand.
I'm still amazed we survived the Edict of Execution. The Chorus may outnumber us, and the Disfavored seem to grow more aggressive every passing span. But we've endured our neap days. The struggle now turns in our favor. What is it you need? Ask away.
Let's speak of magic.
You know, I normally charge for this, but for you...
Ebb smiles, awaiting your query. What can you tell me about your magical traditions?
Now, you know that's a very personal question. The knowledge I have is a centuries-old gift from the Archon of Tides. I would sooner discard my life than the sanctity of that gift. I will speak in generalities only.
Tell me about how you influence Taratus' grave. Trade secret, not what I'm going to talk about. The School of Tides dies with me, and so too will this. And don't bother trying to change my mind on this matter. It'll just get ugly quick. Tell me how you can influence ice, mist, and other forms of water. With years of training. Now look, most of those secrets have already been stolen ages ago by the sages. Doesn't mean I'm going to tell you just because the secret's already out. But it does mean you can go ask somebody else if you really feel so entitled to know. And no, before you ask, I've learned plenty of knowledge stolen by the sages. But no, I don't know how to do what Ebb does. Magically or otherwise. Can you teach me what you know? I suppose I am capable of it, but no, the secrets of the Archon of Tides dies with me. Occulted Jade Archon of Tides is the founder of the School of Tides, as well as its only ruler. Though she wore the title Archon, Occulted Jade never bowed to Kyros, though many have tried to compel her to do so. Having arrived with the settlers that made landfall to 5 wives, she is perhaps the oldest known living tearsman, capable of manipulating the oceans, the moons, and all the transitory forms of water. Occulted Jade used her magic to form a cabal of seafaring traders, musicians, and academians, and it was the dedication to the arts that helped the school endure, for by teaching these trades to the children of noble families, the school remained in the good graces of the realms. Being able to control most anything cyclical and fluid, Occulted Jade has lived for centuries and could still be alive today, but none know with certainty. In the years before the conquest, the School of Tides discovered the Overlord's plan to invade. Despite all assumptions that the Tyr's resident Archon would defend her school and home, to the surprise of everyone, the Archon vanished across the seas, taking nearly the entire School of Tides with her into exile across uncharted waters. She ran away! What are your philosophical teachings of your magic? There's a question I can answer. It would surprise you little to learn that we see all things, people, wars, seasons, to be cyclical, waxing and waning, the various forms like the tides and the light of Taratus' grave. Tyranny, the planet, has 2 satellites visible by the naked eye. The tide-locked Tyranny's grave and the rapidly orbiting Interloper. Scholars have long studied the effects of these 2 moons on the ocean currents, and a great deal of folklore concerns the origins of the moons. A common belief in Kyros Empire is that Tyranny's grave will finally set on the horizon when Kyros' rule ends, whereas those of the Tiers insist the moons are older than the old walls and will outlive even Kyros. The mind is limited. We're born and spend our lives dodging death. We expect all stories to have a beginning and an end. We assume all things start and stop, just like us. In truth, all things are cycles, some by matter of minutes, others by matter of years or lifetimes. In the school of tides, we appreciate patterns of all sorts. Most are called to the depths. Others find their interest skybound. Many still find the tides of human emotion and political fortune far more intriguing than inanimate tides found in orbits and oceans. From what archon do the Tidecaster draw upon for their magic? The first Tidecasters were given the gift of magic by our school's founder, Colted Jade, Archon of Tides. Though she was not of Kyros' ilk, she was as powerful as any archon, and from her name and legacy we can mimic the moon's pull on the seas and change the currents. And it's from her that we have spells to turn the moon's pleasant hues into a baleful ray of searing gravelight. In all these years I have not grown tired of the thrill of power. It's a rush of carnal humors every time. Gravelight is the magical term for the light of the moon of Tyranny's grave, specifically when harnessed and manipulated for nefarious purposes. While the moon's rays are normally incapable of causing so much as a mild sunburn, the Tidecasters have long studied magic that can concentrate these rays into bolts and beams of searing doom. The Tidecasters have spent centuries trying to mimic and control the moon's tidal pull on the oceans, and will often mention that diverting moonlight is the easy stuff compared to pulling and pushing the tides. But modern times have forced the School of Tides to concentrate on the more martial applications of this magic. I'm guessing you can tell me more than I ever want to know about the moons. You'd be right. My magic is generally associated with the moon Tyranny's grave, but you have to know where Interloper is in the sky when mucking about with mystic forces. Do you control water? Or do you mimic the tidal effects the moons have on water? Both, actually. I'm amused you're keen on the difference. Our spells of ice and mist affect water directly, but are of limited volume. Displacing your own body weight in water is no mean feat. But if we're to move an ocean current, I'd drive myself nuts moving water in front of a boat a little at a time. And that's where I'd use a cantrip to simulate a tidal pull. Tyranny's grave is the big one, right? Tell me about it. Tyranny's grave is fixed in the sky, always overhead day and night. It was first named by folks living far to the east. They'd look to the west and see the moon like a permanent hill on the horizon, a grave, where the sun dies each evening. That's how the older folks saw it. If you live in the western part of the world, Tyranny's grave is overhead all the time. That means day and night. It's reflecting the sun's rays, and if you know what you're doing, it doesn't just reflect, it magnifies. Interloper is the one that moves in the sky, right? Exactly. Interloper orbits Tyranny at a steady clip, and its orbit sometimes crosses in front of Tyranny's grave, leading to mystical calamity if you don't know what you're doing. Have you heard anything from the Tidecasters that left before the war? No, and I don't like entertaining the hope. Those cowards are all gone. If they didn't die at sea, they are dead to me. I reserve the right to be pleasantly surprised if they come back, eager to fight the good fight, but I'm not holding my breath. All the brave Tidecasters died, present company accepted.
You know, I normally charge for this, but for you...
Do you know anything about the magic of the Archons? Enough to know I'm out of my element. That is to say, I've studied the many Archons a great deal, and I have a great number of hypotheses and conjectures, but, well, I'm no expert yet. And like most who have invoked the Archons of times past to work magic, I do wonder what difference of birth or experience gives one the magical potential to be an Archon. Most of my studies have been into the question of origins of form. It's known that we can emulate the magic of archons that came before us, but is it possible to tap into the magic of archons yet to be? So far, the answer seems to be no. She looks at the ground with a rumpled smirk. Know anything about the old walls and the spires? Not enough. Never enough. Ebb smiles, twirling her staff in her hands. As a child, I was terrified of the old walls. I think that's true of most folk. Now that I can arc grave light with a wiggle of my fingers, well, I think when I'm a shriveled old hag, dying in the old walls would be a great way to go. What can you tell me about the Bane? What I know is largely taken from Master Canberro's work and some near-fatal experience venturing close to the old walls. As best I understand it, the Bane are bits of magical will that have an extended life of their own. I'm of the belief that they nest or reproduce in the old walls, the only place you regularly find them. Our magic attracts the Bane. That much I know to be true firsthand. Again, this is personal theory, but I'm guessing they eat or drink magic, so our spells are invitations to dine.
Ask away.
Tell me about yourself. What would you like to know? Tell me about your name. Well, I was born Hazen Levjenna. Levenja? Yeah, Hazen Levenja. But for most of my life, and I suppose for all the days after, I'm known and will be known as Ebb. Tidecaster Ebb for those trying to be obsequious. I've also probably used a bunch of aliases that are going to haunt me at some point. Hazen. Didn't realize you were nobility. I know. I dress myself and cook my own food. So misleading. Mother was a magistrate of Ardent. Father was admiralty. It's mostly meaningless, though. Our lands are now the Overlords. How did you get that nickname? It's one of those not especially funny jokes that stuck long past its season. I wrote the word Ebb incorrectly on a written examination. Master Fulvax started calling me Ebb from then on. He claimed it fit me. Said I was a cynical little shit that always sees the ebb, never the flow. Did you always want to be a Tidecaster? So when I was a little girl, what I really wanted was to be a Marine. The burly bitch at the prow of a trireme. First to crack some skulls when the ship's rammed, you know? An honest living. Fortunately, the school sought me out before I got myself killed at sea. The School of Tides was looking for new blood, and my father was an Admiral of Haven. So the school wanted me for the political connections. I got to spend my first couple of years proving I actually belonged to the Tidecasters. That was fun. What did you do in the years before the war? My husband was born in Apex, and he left his prosperous lands to be with me. So when the nest was empty, it seemed right we leave my homeland and see his side of the tiers. We had a year and a bit to ourselves before the war upturned things. We saw all of Apex. I took him along my old sailing routes around 5 Wives and Sunder. Those were good times. Then came the war, and I learned I would be one of the last tiersmen to live free of Kyros. Ever since then, I think Oathbreaker has technically been my chosen profession. Tell me about your family. Trying to salt old wounds? They're all gone, but if you really care to know, I had a husband, 3 kids. Siblings I didn't hate. Every family has its troubles. I was lucky that awkward and stilted dinner banter was the worst of it. Tell me about your husband. Pelox Aldanos and I were married in 410. Aldanos was a falksman of the Vendrian god back before they were starving partisans, but I saw him more as a carpenter. Woodworking was just a hobby of his, but my fondest memories are of him trying to shape something, and me making stupid jokes about the firmness of his materials. What became of him? He perished at the gates of judgment. Ooh, I fought that battle. I saw him die. I do not wish to discuss it. Just know I've made my peace with it and I'm glad I was with him on the field of battle when his time came. I miss him, but it might have been for the best. Though he was only a few years older than me, my studies left me. Always a bit younger than him. The difference grew with time. Aldanos was slowing down and half figured the Gates of Judgment would be his last battle. If anything, he got exactly the death he wanted. So in that sense, I'm very happy for him. Tell me about your children. There were the twins, Drevenor and Lorma, then my youngest son, Akamus. Aldenos wanted more, but I was nearing the end of my trials at the School of Tides, and dueling with lethal magics is a terrible idea when with child. Drevenor and Lorma followed my husband's trade and took to the Falx. Alchemists like the harp more than people. Can't blame him one bit. I made sure my children could read, and I'm damn proud of that fact. Probably the only thing I did right. What of the twins? They died at the gates of judgment, or at least Drevenor died, run through by a disfavored spear. Lorna was at the battle, but I don't know what became of her. My fear has been she was recruited by the Scarlet Chorus. Perhaps she has a new name, if she's still alive. What became of your youngest? Without Drevenor and Lorma, Alchemist, well, he never quite... He took his own life in 430. Ebb shrugs, her eyes glancing far away. I should have put him on a trireme and shoved him out into the high seas. He did not ask for birth, nor did I prepare him for the bitterness that life would offer. I'm very sorry for your loss. Spare me the sorrow. We've all lost family to Kyros. I just lost 2 in one battle. But even then, I'm hardly unique. What of the rest of your family? My family's Haven folk through and through. My mother prided herself on being descended from a Hazen Rabban, one of the founding magistrates of the city of Ardent. She looks to the side, mouth twisting in thought. Sad thing is, they died during the conquest, but that's not how I lost contact. I lost contact because magic and travel became my life. Had plenty of time to get to know them as an adult, but I simply missed it. But that one's my fault. I can't rightly blame Kyros for everything. Not so sure I believe any of this. No, that doesn't seem right. How did you fall in with the Vendrian Guard? In times past, folks of Apex would run us out of town if they saw 2 or more Tidecasters congregating, but war makes strange bedfellows. To the Vendrian Guard's credit, they knew they had to rely on their neighbors. I only wish more of us joined the cause, and sooner. It's to my shame that many of my peers were cowards. If the whole school had met the enemy as a unified force, best not to think over it. She waves her hand dismissively. If the people of Apex were so hostile, why come to their aid? Though the School of Tides has no official claim to the land, we consider Vendrian's Well to be something of a sacred realm. It's more than a landlocked circle of mountains. It's sort of big bowl, peculiar waterways. Besides, my late husband was from Apex. I'd know he'd have joined with the Vendrian Guard had he lived long enough, so I need to honor his passion and do this for him. Why were the Tidecasters reluctant to fight? Too much navel-gazing, not enough of vitriol. Well, that's my guess. A century of relative peace and calm meant we had become a guild of too many musicians and poets. Hey everyone, J-Square John Jeremy here, and I want to thank you for watching. Check out another video from yours truly, or take a look at the playlist for this series. If you haven't done so already, click on the logo to subscribe and keep track of this channel. Until next time, so long, and take care.